C-Card presents Back Issue Bloodbath with your hosts, Andrew Young and Petula Neal.
In 2018, the film Black Panther hit theaters, and suddenly there was a great realization in comics by the people that created them, the people that produced them, that, hey, there are Black readers out there who enjoy authentic Black stories. Maybe we should write more authentic Black stories and bring in the right people to write them. Welcome to Back Issue Bloodbath. I'm Andrew Young.
I'm Petula Neal.
And this week we are looking at modern Black representation in comics, specifically over the past 10 years, and how, while still not perfect, is getting much better compared to the way it was 10 years ago. And kind of, as I said, part of it is the right people are being brought in to talk about their own experiences and bring in their own heritage. But also, again, the cynical side of it is people realize that, hey, we can make more money the more people that read our stuff. So those two motivations put together has created a much more interesting Black representation in comics than there has been previously. Petula, of course, you know, the like all the way back in history that originally in the Golden Age, Black characters were just written as comedy relief, and they were very, very stereotypical, like racist representations, right?
Even the ink color was
Yeah.
just a little
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
And we talked about that many times.
Oh,
And shouts to my Asian and South Asian friends as well, because y'all were in the struggle bus of there's more than CMYK out there.
yeah. No, I hear
Anyway.
you. And then, of course, we get into the Silver Age, and Stan Lee and Jack Kirby introduce the Black Panther. And it's been pointed out by Dr. Sheena C. Howard, who wrote Black Comics, Politics of Race and Representation, that they had to introduce him as a king from an African nation because they wanted to have a character that they could present as a hero, and due to not outward racism, which of course they knew that they were going to get a backlash from, but systemic racism of just the readers not being able to buy a Black hero because there had never been a Black hero. This was their kind of like pumping up the show, like, this is a character who's not a Black American, so it's not anybody you've ever met. And like that is what they had to do to put the Black Panther on the same level as the white characters, the white heroes that were in the books with him. In fact, they had it that in his first appearance, he had to defeat the entire Fantastic Four.
Which he did handily.
Yeah, which he did handily. And that was great. But specifically, he did that because the systemic thing of like a character of color had to be overly exceptional compared to their white counterparts to be accepted.
One of the categories on I started to spreadsheet this, folks, and I actually had a column called doing twice as much.
Yeah.
To get half as much. But yeah, it's those, you have to be super duper exceptional to be allowed to be in the room around the table, to basically not be called boy or be the equivalent of a comic book wet nurse. Yeah,
exactly. So they had to do it to that level for audiences to accept the character. Then we move on to the 70s, and characters become very stereotypical of the Blaxploitation era. And there's like a level of, for some reason, if you were going to introduce a character, they had to be connected to a life of crime and poverty. So, of course, you got Luke Cage, you got the Falcon, who people might not remember or might not even know. When he was first introduced, he was a pimp. And then Black Lightning, John Stewart, of course, he was a Marine, but he came from a poor, rougher environment. Like, these characters were portrayed in that way.
Yeah, there were no, and we still struggle with this in the community, there were no Huxtables. There were no, my parents are doctors and lawyers of those early characters. It was all, single mothers, orphans, criminals. A lot of the language was, yeah,
exactly. In the 90s, with Milestone, we finally get these characters that are regular people. Like, they don't have to have any connections to crime. They can just be people, exactly. Created by Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cowan, Michael Davis, Derek T. Dingle. But the thing was, even though it was an imprint at DC, the 90s was an overexplosion of characters, and unfortunately a lot of these characters got lost in the shuffle. The only one that kind of is still within people's minds is Static, for Static Shock, but not because of the comic, because of the cartoon that came out 10 years later. So it isn't until more recently that now things are opening up and we get to see a vast variety of new Black characters, but also like rehab of some older characters. Like Brother Voodoo is now Dr. Voodoo, and a lot of the writing now of him is actually tied into a lot of Haitian history, which is something that was missing from the comic before. So now we're getting to see these full-fledged characters, and part of the reason why is we're now getting in a lot more Black creators that weren't getting the opportunity up until about 10 years ago. And that's because they would only take a chance on somebody who was already established, like a Dwayne McDuffie, like a Reginald Hudlin, or someone who had been embedded in the system from the beginning, like Christopher Priest back when he was Jim Owsley. But of course, if you read a lot of Christopher Priest and Jim Owsley stuff, up until Black Panther, you wouldn't know that a Black writer was writing that.
Yeah, and he's talked at length about his situation, and even when he got Black Panther and then introduced the character who in the movies played by the Hobbit as the voice of the traditional comic reader to kind of bring people in, and it was very successful. He still couldn't get out of the pun intended ghetto of Black characters, and like one of his biggest successes in the more modern era still ended up being one of his biggest frustrations. So
yeah, exactly. And so now we're getting away from that because we're now getting a lot of writers who are getting the opportunity that they weren't getting before. Like, of course, like now you got David F. Walker, Jeffrey Thorne, Evan Narcisse, of course, Stephanie Williams, who we talked about before, Evel Ewing. All of these people are coming in and they're bringing an authenticity to the characters that was missing from before. And because of that, now we're getting opportunities to read different stories in the big two. And again, there's some people that are very excited about this, like Evan Narcisse, he's very excited about this. But then David F. Walker, who writes some great stuff, does stand on the things like, well, it's because they finally have figured out that Black people have money, that there are Black fans out there, and we should finally cater to them.
And that's where the time frame that you picked just makes so much sense, because 2016, first of all, 2015 we get the establishment of the Dwayne McDuffie Award.
Yeah.
But 2016, it's, hey, we did it. Post-racial. It's the end of Obama's second term. Everything's fine now, right, guys? Right? And the real exclamation mark on that is that the 2016 Ta-Nehisi Coates Black Panther run was like the best-selling comic of that year, drawn by Brian Stokries. It should have been a time. It should have been a time. Yeah. And to your point, it's money. It's not just money. One of the bigs was making a ton of money. And that's where we get into one of the biggest arguments that we see from a certain quadrant of the internet is, why don't you just do your own thing? And also in the late aughts and early teens of the 2000s, we had the rise of Kickstarter. So at the same time that you have the bigs finally remembering that Black people have money, you also have a way for established and new creators to fund their own work.
And find their audience through that too.
Exactly. And to show even to the bigs, it's 100% for every person of color, rainbow, etc., other that you have funded on Kickstarter. It's not like they didn't try to do it in air quotes easier way to get an agent or go to one of the bigs or pitch it to somebody else. It's that they were probably told no a bunch of times and had done enough on spec that they were able to put a good enough Kickstarter together to get stuff funded. So my normal spreadsheet exercise where, I had the, I see a white character, let's paint it Black. That was my your Green Lantern, your Miles Morales, your whatever. And the, reboot of previously problematic. I really ended up with so much more data in the independent. And that is almost all of those titles were either related to Kickstarter or famous person collabo. And a lot of them I had donated to. Like, I donated to one of the original Niobe Kickstarters when Sebastian Jones was collaborating with Amanda Stenberg. And you remember the cover for that one in Niobe. It's like a half elf, warrior bounty hunter, which just sounds cool. Like, let's take the blackness out of it. So imagine that with like Amanda Stenberg's features, because she has sort of like that same quality that Elijah Wood has, like just almost preternaturally large eyes, not maybe spaced as far apart as Macaulay Culkin and his brothers, but like just looks a little bit otherworldly, like her default feature set. So throw some pointy ears and some paint on that. It's great. Yeah. And actually, Niobe, that creator and Stranger Comics, they're actually about to collaborate with Tuso Mbudu, who you may know from such things as Underground Railroad or The Woman King. So it's like you have a mix of Kickstarter stuff, but also like famous Black nerds that are like, yeah, we were always here and we were just buying your stuff, but now we can also like help create or write on things. Erica Alexander from Living Single has written comic books. Like she, in 2018, she actually wrote on season 11 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's a whole world that was ignored, but when
puts that out, right? Boom?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And when they saw all the money that Marvel was able to make off of Black Panther, first the comic book and then later on the movie, it really opened up. So this isn't like altruistic. This isn't about going, we're going broke. This is literally like, oh, we could have had more money if we'd had more of this.
We're going to pick up that money on the table that we've been leaving there.
This is not about doing the right thing. This is about getting paid.
But we as readers gain from that because we do get these stories. That's the positive side of the greed. I love it. The positive side of the cynicism is we get these stories.
Yeah, and capitalism's not all bad.
Yeah. And then again, we've gotten new characters over the past couple of years that have been, exciting, of course. Like Riri Williams was created by Brian Michael Bendis, but Ewing Ewing fleshed out the character in her series. Joe Mullen, the Green Lantern. Yeah, Sojourner. Yeah. Who, of course, is the star of Far Sector. And then, of course, there's Naomi that David F. Walker and Brian Michael Bendis created together, which had a TV series already. Like that's like in these past couple of years, some of these great characters are popping up and they're already, finding their place within the big two, like cementing their mark and have a fan base. And that is great in my opinion. Cause it's like, there was years that Marvel and DC would create new characters on a whim and then never follow them up, never give them the support. Be like, well, they got a mini series. To hell with it. These characters are getting not only brought back up for reoccurring series, but are being put into the teams like the Justice League and the Avengers and the Champions and things like that. So they're getting a lot of page space, which again, 10, 15 years ago wouldn't have happened.
And there's just a lot of good new independent IP out there. There's new characters, new worlds, and it's also, listener, it's not just people of color getting ready to draw these things. Like one of my favorite books, Skyward, it's a couple white dudes.
Yeah.
And just like such a great premise, like World Without Gravity, but like make it conspiracy theory, like so fun. And the writer on that worked on Lucifer, which is like just a general nerd favorite, and a writer that shows that he's been able to show different characters, different backgrounds in authentic ways and make each person a person and not just like a trope of what they are. And like big and small books, like one-offs, like the Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. I donated to that Kickstarter. Excellence came out with a beautiful hardcover as that was sort of winding down. A secret cabal of black magicians. Like I'm excited because there's just so much stuff out there that could be made in other things, could continue. Omni, the humanoids like spinoff, we've talked about the whole Ignition thing in that. Obviously, David F. Walker's everything, including like Bitterroot and the Black Panther stuff.
Well, see, you bring up the Black Panther stuff, and another thing that has been great recently is that over the past 10 years, let's face it, what's been the stupid thing that hard right-wing people have been obsessed with and are freaking out about? They're like, don't teach critical race theory in our schools, which nobody has, but they're acting like, oh, they're teaching stuff. And it's like, oh, so you don't want people to teach history correctly. Okay.
Then
Thankfully,
stop giving us family tree assignments and wondering why they wander off at a certain point.
exactly.
I'm just going to draw a boat.
Yeah. But thankfully, critical race theory is alive and well in comics. You bring up the history of the Black Panther Party by David F. Walker. Of course, he's also written The Life of Frederick Douglass. Of course, there was the John Lewis penned
the March
comics.
books.
Yeah,
the
March
third
books.
one came out in 2016.
And Run Book 1 as well. So all of those books are there. But then also even ones, there's even critical race theory being taught in narrative fiction as well. R. Allen Brooks, he has a comic called Anguish Garden, and it's an allegory about leaving white supremacy behind. And white supremacist movements and white supremacists, of course, are sending death threats to him and whatnot. But books like that, we're getting like really interesting allegories as well. You're getting this stuff in comics. You're not getting it anywhere else. And it's a great educational tool on top of just being fun books to read as well.
And it has skipped over to like non-comic book people. So, listener, a couple of years ago, you may have noticed, and even this past December, you may have seen a few people on the site formerly known as Twitter talking about Black people getting superpowers on December 21st. So back in 2020, like a joke tweet, because a couple planets went into alignment for the first time in 400 years. And yeah, we know what happened 400 years ago. There was this whole thing of like Black people were going to get superpowers that day. And everybody, Black Twitter was like joking, like what your powers would be. Very much similar to the premise of Black, another great kind of semi-independent comic where the premise is, what if only Black people could get superpowers? And that is now an annual thing on social media where on December, you'll see a lot of pictures of a version of Dr. Manhattan in like a Kente hat or of a Sean or whatever on Twitter. Just scroll by. It's not for everyone, but it's super fun to, wake up in late December around the solstice and hope against hope. Maybe this year I get my superpowers. Yeah.
Well, what would the superpower you'd want though?
I think I would be similar to Emma Stone, but instead of turning it a diamond, it would be salt, because I'm a salty auntie. Yeah.
All right. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
also goes with like, I just like ribs in general. It's one of our fun activities that we do when we're not talking about comic books, is eating ribs.
Yes. We do like eating ribs. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So salty and a little bit sweet.
There you go. So of course, like we're getting all these great stories, but as I mentioned, there are people, there's backlash, there's people that suck. And this is something that's just happened over the past few years, which I was really interested in. Joseph Ilyich put together the Access Guide to the Black comic community. Basically, as somebody has said it, it's a great book for comic readers. That basically it tells you the Black friendly conventions, the Black friendly comic shops across America, the Black owned comic shops, the Black owned publishers, a list of Black characters, Black writers, Black artists. And they printed a new one recently for 2021 and 2022, which is still available. You can pick it up. But yeah, I just found that interesting that it's like, there's a guide out there for the Black comic community to basically have a safe journey through fandom.
It's fantastic. If anything, when we first sort of scheduled this, I was like, oh, it's going to be a research thing. And then I realized I literally just have to search in my own Gmail for Kickstarter. And I donated to half of if you Google like popular Black independent comic books for the last decade. Because like, I don't have a lot of money, but once you donate to one thing, the algorithm finds you and like knows you have a few coins to spare. And that's been the thing that's also been great about this sort of post-Obama Kickstarter era is once you engage with one creator or artist, you'll eventually end up finding other things, either through following them on social media or through Kickstarter or through them moving to other titles. As you mentioned, Ewing, like there's, or Evan Narcisse, just journalist, but then also doing comics and coming in and out of that world. And it's a great time because now you don't have to hunt as much. Before you had to look, but between the fact that our computers are creeping on us and that there's just more people kind of cross-pollinating between working for the bigs and working for independents and doing their own crowdfunded stuff and then cross-pollinating, it's just a great time to be able to find new content because you don't always want to read the same stuff, or sometimes you want to read about a character, but with a different twist on them.
Yeah.
And you have everything from Prodigy, which is yet another one of those, may end up as a Mark Millar Netflix show, to things that are like Blackety Black. That's a super independent and completely funded like as a one-off.
And then, of course, we've also got great Black creators writing white characters as well, like Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote on Captain America. There's only been like a dozen Black creators that have written for Marvel to get to finally to now, like, hey, here's Captain America. That's great. That's strides in the right direction. I want to read something that Eva Ewing said that when she decided to take on Ironheart, the Riri Williams comic, and she was getting all this backlash, and she was like, for this, I've done a hell of a lot more like political stuff than this and stuff like that. And she brought it up to Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Ta-Nehisi Coates said to her, if you do this, you will face the most racism and sexism you've ever dealt with in your life. And you will also have the most fun you've ever had writing anything. And I think that's the key, is that they're getting to write these characters and just do stuff that they haven't gotten a chance to do in other mediums, which is just, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is the one thing you'll find a lot of these creators. They may not necessarily always have their like email on their social, or some of them don't even have like a social you can contact them through.
Yeah.
They talk about people finding through other people. It's like a real like Bill Murray doesn't have an agent kind of situation. And that's because of the internet. So if you see somebody being terrible and you're a person that looks like them and doesn't look like me, maybe just tell them, pump the brakes. Because guess what? You're not the first person to have a negative opinion about them, and most of the negative opinions about them or their title or their work are usually wrapped up in death threats or sexual aggression, and they don't need to hear another one. Like, if you don't like it, buy something else.
Yeah, for all you white supremacists out there that are freaking out about finally other colors and races getting time and sexes getting time in the comics, in your comics. Well, those white characters are still there, so fuck off.
And as long as the bigs are occasionally making money off it, they're not going to stop.
No.
So while your rhyming slogans for why it's a bad idea are catchy, they only care about money. And when you think of, fancy filmmakers like Gina Bythewood talking about how hard it is to get movies made because places only want to make comic movies, but also in the same roundtable confirming that they were trying to make Woman King for 10 years. And by the time she was engaged, they were only able to make it because of Black Panther. Like, these two things can exist in the same space. Like,
exactly.
You don't get the money for Woman King to make that movie unless Black Panther existed, unless the comics existed, unless they'd made multiple monies. So for every, we only had 5 issues of World of Wakanda, but they still made a ton of money off of the other runs, and they are, doing one-offs for like Wakanda, another Stephanie Williams story that just came out a little while ago, as well as we're going to have another show for that. You just don't have to watch, read, consume everything if you don't like it, but understand it's getting made because somebody's crunched the numbers and decided, I want to make money off this. Or in the case of WB, we're not making this because we're in a lawsuit and we don't want to pay residuals to a widow. But whatever, it's cool.
Yeah. But hey, I guess the bottom line is, though, if you want to see more of these characters, if you want to see more of these great works, if you want to see more films like the Woman King,
I still
you
just want to see Static flying around in his like garbage lid. Like I
say
don't know why.
give it time. It's going to happen
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
But hey, it's just comes down to this: support Black characters, support Black creators, and you're going to get more of this. That's what it all comes down to. So definitely. So this has been another episode of Back to Bloodbath. Petula, where can people find you?
At innovative.com on Twitter or Hive at Obesacantavit, OBESACANTAVAT, and here with you.
And of course, you can find everything I do over at geekhardshow.com. Follow me on Twitter at geekhard. Follow me on Instagram at Andrew_of_geek_hard. Of course, you can follow this very show on Facebook at Back Issue Bloodbath, where we post the new episode every week. But to make sure you don't miss an episode, you subscribe to us on your podcasting platform of choice. So in that way, you don't have to think about it. It's just going to show up. It's there. And then when it is there, you can listen to it. And then you can talk to your friends like you know what's going on. Like you'll have an edge in those very deep intellectual conversations you have over martinis. I don't know. That would be cool if you guys did that. This has been Back Issue Bloodbath. I'm Andrew Young.
I'm Petula O'Neill.
Have yourself a good